My brother took credit for my work while I supported him, so I exposed everything publicly. And the outcome left him begging for mercy. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and for most of my life, I genuinely believed supporting my younger brother, Alex, was my responsibility. That belief wasn't something anyone explicitly taught me, it was something quietly drilled into me through years of comparisons, guilt, and the unspoken rule that, he needs more help than you. I remember being a kid and watching him struggle with homework while I breezed through mine, and even then, my parents would sigh and say, "Just help him, honey, you know he gets overwhelmed." It felt like my life was built around holding him up. Alex never really changed as we grew older. He bounced between schools, part-time jobs, and random hobbies with the same wide-eyed uncertainty he always had. Meanwhile, I pushed myself, late nights studying, long hours at work, constantly trying to prove that being the responsible one wasn't a curse. I thought helping him would keep our family stable, maybe even bring us closer. I still remember the night he told me he wanted to pursue a creative career. He sat across from me at my kitchen table, twirling his hoodie strings, avoiding eye contact. "I think I finally know what I want to do," he said. "I want to make something real. Something people actually care about." His voice trembled like he was confessing a crime. "I'll help you," I told him without hesitation. "Whatever you need, guidance, equipment, ideas. I'm here." He looked up, relief washing over his face. "Really? You do that for me?" "Of course," I said. "You're my brother." I let him borrow my camera, my software licenses, even my desk when he needed a quiet place to work. I walked him through editing techniques, pacing, storytelling structure, things I spent years mastering. He would nod and say, "Man, you're so good at this. I don't know what I'd do without you." At the time, those words felt sincere. Supportive. Grateful. I didn't know they were the first threads in a web he was already quietly weaving, one that would eventually wrap around me and choke everything I had built. I wish I could say the first red flags were obvious, but they weren't. They were subtle, almost harmless, just little moments I brushed off as exaggerations or misunderstandings. It started when a mutual friend casually mentioned, "Hey, Alex told me you guys are working on that new project together. Sounds exciting." I remember blinking in confusion because that project was something I had been developing for months, long before Alex even mentioned wanting to be creative. But I laughed it off and said, "Yeah, something like that," because correcting it felt petty. One evening, I overheard Alex on the phone, pacing around my living room while using my equipment. "Yeah, man, I came up with this concept last week," he said, his voice confident in a way I had never heard before. My chest tightened. "Came up with?" When he noticed me listening, he ended the call quickly. "Oh, I was just simplifying it. You know how people are. They don't understand teamwork." "Teamwork?" I repeated, raising an eyebrow. He shrugged. "Well, yeah. I mean, you're teaching me, right? So it kind of counts." I wanted to push back, but he looked so fragile, like confronting him would shatter the little confidence he finally found. So I swallowed the discomfort. But the lies grew bolder. My parents started making concerning comments too. My mom once said, "Alex told us he's been helping you with your big projects. I'm glad you're finally giving him credit." I stared at her, stunned, but she continued smiling as if the conversation was completely normal. Then a colleague asked me, "Is Alex your creative partner now?" I laughed awkwardly, pretending it was a joke, though doubt gnawed at me. Each time, I convinced myself it wasn't worth creating tension over a few inflated stories. He was insecure. He needed encouragement. Maybe this was part of his process. But the uncomfortable truth lingered beneath everything. Alex wasn't just stretching the truth, he was quietly rewriting it, piece by piece, until my work became our work, and then slowly, unbelievably, his. And I had no idea that these little lies were preparing the ground for something much bigger. Much uglier. A few months later, something happened that should have been the highlight of my entire career. I received an email from a major creative company, a name big enough that I reread the message 3 times just to make sure it was real. They wanted me to pitch a concept, something fresh, something innovative, something they believed I was capable of delivering. My hands actually shook as I scrolled through the details. This was the kind of opportunity people spend years chasing. I remember calling out to Alex, who was sitting on my couch scrolling through his phone. "Hey, man, you won't believe this," I said, holding up my laptop. He looked up lazily at first, but when I explained who the company was, his eyes widened. "Dude, that's huge," he whispered. "Yeah," I said, grinning. "I want to nail this. And maybe you can shadow the process so you learn something." His expression flickered, surprise, something sharper, then a smile. "Yeah. I'd love to. Thanks." That night, I worked on rough drafts while Alex watched me type, leaning over my shoulder occasionally. At first, he was quiet, just observing. But slowly, he started saying things like, "Maybe don't include that," or "You should tighten this part," or "What if you change the theme?" Small suggestions, nothing harmful. I chalked it up to enthusiasm. A few days later, he asked, "Can I look over your notes? Just to understand how you build ideas." "Sure," I said, handing him my notebook. He studied it with an intensity one hadn't seen from him before, like he was memorizing everything. The week before my pitch, something shifted. The company stopped responding to my updates. No follow-up. No confirmation. No replies, not even a courtesy acknowledgement. I refreshed my inbox obsessively, wondering if I'd said something wrong or missed a deadline. Alex noticed me getting anxious. "Maybe they're just busy," he muttered without meeting my eyes. But something in his tone felt off, like he knew more than he was saying. A heavy, unfamiliar dread settled in my stomach. Something wasn't right, and I was about to find out why. The truth didn't come crashing down all at once, it slipped in slowly, like a cold draft under a locked door. A mutual acquaintance, someone I hadn't spoken to in months, messaged me out of nowhere, "Hey, man, didn't know your brother was pitching to that company too." Crazy coincidence. I stared at the message, my heart thudding unevenly. Pitching to? There was no "to." That opportunity had been offered to me, not us, not him. I called him immediately. "Hey, what do you mean Alex is pitching?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. The guy sounded confused. "Didn't he tell you? He reached out to them last week. Said he developed this concept and wanted to present it. They were impressed." My mouth went dry. Do you know what concept he presented?" Yeah. Sounded a lot like the stuff you've been working on." I felt the world tilt sideways. When Alex walked into the apartment that evening, humming like nothing was wrong, I confronted him. "Alex, did you pitch to the company? The one that contacted me?" He froze for a split second, just long enough to confirm everything. Then he rolled his eyes. "You're blowing things out of proportion." "I didn't steal anything. You used my drafts," I said quietly. "My designs. My research." He snapped back instantly. "So what? You act like you own creativity. I've helped you for months. Why can't you just share credit for once?" I stared at him, stunned. "Share credit? Alex, you didn't contribute any of this. You took my work and passed it off as yours." He scoffed, crossing his arms. "You've had enough chances. It's my turn. And honestly, you should be proud I'm confident enough to try." The words hit me harder than the betrayal itself. "You've had enough chances." As if my success was something he believed he was entitled to steal. And then, the final blow. "The company said they're not sure who came up with the idea first," he muttered. "They're putting things on hold until they figure it out." My entire future, frozen because of him. I felt something inside me crack. The first thing I did after confronting Alex was call my parents, thinking, naively, that they would finally see what I'd been dealing with. I laid everything out, the stolen pitch, the disappearing emails, the audacity of him claiming ownership of work he didn't even understand. I expected shock, support, maybe even anger on my behalf. Instead, my mom sighed like I was complaining about a dirty dish. "Honey, Alex told us all about it already," she said gently. "You're being dramatic." "Dramatic?" I repeated, my voice cracking. "He stole my work. He sabotaged a huge opportunity." My dad chimed in, his tone frustrated but directed at me. "You know your brother struggles. You've always been the strong one. Why are you making this harder for him?" I felt my pulse spike. "I'm not making anything harder, he ruined this for me." "Maybe he thought you weren't confident enough," my mom added. "He said he was helping." Helping. The word made me laugh out loud, bitter and humorless. That evening, Alex stood in the hallway listening to everything. When I hung up the phone, he leaned against the doorframe with a smugness he didn't even try to hide. "See," he said softly. "They understand me." I clenched my jaw. "You manipulated them." He shrugged. "They know you can be controlling about your work." Controlling. That's the narrative he painted. My parents called again later that night. "Honey, please don't make this a big fight," my mom pleaded. "He finally feels confident for once. Don't tear him down." My dad added, "Be the bigger person. You've always been the reliable one." Reliable. Strong. Responsible. Every word they used to praise me was now being used as a weapon, another way of saying, "You don't get to complain." I hung up, staring at my phone, feeling something cold settle into my chest. This wasn't just Alex twisting the truth. This was my entire family rewriting the story, turning my pain into an inconvenience, and his betrayal into some noble act of self-improvement. And none of them had any idea that things were about to get so much worse. The fallout didn't hit me all at once, it unraveled piece by piece, like someone slowly pulling threads out of the life I'd spent years stitching together. The creative company finally emailed me, but it wasn't the message I'd been praying for. "Due to conflicting claims regarding authorship, we are unable to proceed with your proposal at this time." I reread the line over and over, each word sinking deeper until it felt like something inside me was caving in. My hands actually shook as I closed the email, feeling humiliation burn under my skin. That same week, 2 long-term clients suddenly grew distant. One called me and hesitated before speaking. "Listen, we've just heard some things. Alex reached out and said you've been unstable, unreliable. He said he handled most of your recent work." My throat tightened. "That's not true. None of it." "I figured," he muttered. "But the confusion is messy. We're going to step back for now." Step back. Those words hurt more than any insult. I confronted Alex that night. "You told people I'm unstable." He shrugged without guilt. "I said whatever I needed to make them take me seriously." "Don't make this about your ego." "My ego?" I whispered, staring at him. "You're destroying my career." He rolled his eyes. "Maybe it's time you learn what it feels like to start from nothing." That sentence cut straight through me. Bills piled up. A contract renewal fell through. Even my collaborators began treating me like a liability, not because they believed Alex, but because the confusion he created made me look chaotic, unprofessional. My parents offered no support. Instead, they insisted I stop attacking Alex and focus on rebuilding. Rebuilding what? The rubble he created? Every night, I sat alone at my desk, staring at unfinished projects I no longer had the energy to complete. Doubt seeped in like poison. Maybe I was the problem. Maybe I had been too harsh. Maybe I should have shared more, trusted more, given more. That was the lowest point I had ever reached, the moment I realized I was drowning in a mess someone else made, and no one was coming to save me. But I didn't know then that rock bottom was exactly where the truth would finally start to reveal itself. Rock bottom has a strange way of sharpening your senses. One night, after staring blankly at my screen for what felt like hours, something inside me snapped, not in a destructive way, but in a clarifying one. I suddenly needed answers. Real ones. Not the twisted narratives Alex fed everyone. Not the comforting lies my parents wrapped around him. I needed to know how far this betrayal actually went. So I started digging. It began with a simple instinct. I opened our shared cloud folders, places where we'd uploaded drafts and ideas when we first started collaborating. What I found made my breath hitch. Entire sections of my work had missing timestamps, replaced file names, or duplicates attributed to Alex. At first, I thought maybe he'd accidentally moved things. But the deeper I looked, the more deliberate everything felt. Then I checked the email drafts. One folder was labeled with his name, but inside were copies of my original pitch documents, word for word. My hands trembled as I scrolled. No, he didn't, I whispered to myself. He did. There were messages he'd sent to clients pretending to be me, introducing himself politely, building rapport, then slowly shifting the narrative. One even said, "I'm worried about him. He's been inconsistent. I might take over some responsibilities to keep things stable." My heart pounded in my ears. He wasn't just stealing my work, he was destroying my reputation methodically. Digging further, I found something even worse, screenshots of him mocking me in private group chats, saying things like, "He thinks he's some genius. Watch me take his whole career out from under him. He'll thank me later when he's forced to be humble." The betrayal wasn't accidental. It wasn't insecurity. It wasn't a moment of weakness. It was calculated. The final blow was a hidden folder labeled, "Final Version, Alex." Inside was my pitch, my words, my structure, my research, right down to the formatting quirks I'd used for years. He didn't just steal my ideas. He stole my identity. And in that moment, something cold and determined began to crystallize inside me. If he wanted a war, he had no idea what kind of opponent he had just created. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Alex's smug smile, his fake humility, the messages where he mocked me like I was some pathetic joke. But beneath the hurt, something else was forming, something sharp, calm, and terrifyingly clear. If Alex spent months orchestrating this betrayal, then I would spend whatever time necessary dismantling it. Not with rage. Not with yelling. But with precision. I started by organizing everything, screenshots, versions of files, timestamps, the edited folders, the deleted drafts I managed to recover. My desktop looked like a digital crime board. I labeled everything meticulously: Evidence A, stolen drafts. Evidence B, false emails. Evidence C, malicious messages. I wasn't just proving he stole my work, I was building a timeline of intent. I reached out to a legal advisor next. He skimmed through a sample of the evidence and leaned back, eyebrows raised. "This isn't just unprofessional," he said. "This is career sabotage. If you expose this properly, no company would dare back him." "Am I protected?" I asked quietly. He nodded. "As long as every claim is backed with proof, and you have more than enough." The next step was talking to clients privately. I called one of the people Alex had lied to. "Just let me explain," I said, voice trembling but steady. After 5 minutes of showing him screenshots and version histories, he sighed heavily. "Jesus. I'm so sorry. We had no idea." "It's not your fault," I whispered. He made sure no one knew. Each conversation was the same: shock, anger, sympathy. And in every voice, I sensed something shifting back in my favor. But I stayed quiet publicly. I didn't confront Alex. I didn't warn him. Because for the first time, I realized something powerful. He had no idea I knew everything. No idea I had proof. No idea I wasn't broken anymore. And that ignorance was going to be my sharpest weapon. The morning I decided to expose everything, the air in my apartment felt different, still, heavy, almost electric. I sat at my desk with the evidence folder open, my heartbeat thudding slowly, steadily, like the countdown to something irreversible. I reread every piece of proof one more time, making sure nothing could be twisted or disproven. Then I began writing. I didn't rant. I didn't insult him. I didn't embellish. I simply laid out the truth, chronologically, factually, and backed with files anyone could verify. When it was ready, I posted it publicly, on professional forums, creative communities, and every place where Alex had used my name. Then I closed my laptop and sat in silence, waiting for the storm to hit. It didn't take long. 20 minutes later, my phone started buzzing non-stop. Messages. Calls. Notifications. People were furious. Comments poured in. This is sickening. He didn't just steal, he erased you. How could your own brother do this? Companies I'd collaborated with before posted responses of their own. We have verified the evidence and apologize for misunderstanding the situation. We are reviewing all claims made by Alex and retracting previous statements. Alex texted me first. Alex, take it down. Right now. I didn't reply. 2 minutes later. Alex, this is defamation. You'll regret this. But the world had already seen the truth. There was no undoing it. By the end of the day, he deleted all his social media. Friends unfollowed him. People he had bragged to publicly questioned him, demanding answers he couldn't give. His carefully constructed persona, the confident creative genius, the misunderstood underdog, collapsed instantly under the weight of evidence. And for the first time in months, I felt something I didn't expect, not triumph, not revenge, but relief. Because the truth wasn't hidden anymore. And now everyone knew exactly who he really was. If part 9 was the explosion, part 10 was the fallout, and it was brutal to watch, even after everything he'd done. The next morning, I woke up to dozens of forwarded screenshots. People were dissecting every lie Alex had ever told, comparing his past posts with my evidence, pointing out inconsistencies I hadn't even noticed. His reputation wasn't just cracking, it was shattering in real time. Every room he had forced himself into by using my name was now ejecting him with the same intensity he once used to push me aside. Around noon, one of the biggest companies he had been bragging about working with released a public statement. After reviewing the evidence presented, we are terminating all discussions with Alex. We do not condone fraud, misrepresentation, or intellectual theft. Seeing it in writing felt surreal. This wasn't just a private conflict anymore. This was official. Documented. Permanent. A few hours later, another call came through, this time from someone who had once been one of Alex's closest friends. "Dude, what the hell?" he whispered. We confronted him. He denied everything at first, then started crying and blaming you. I sighed. That sounds about right. He kept saying you were jealous of him, he added. But no one believes him anymore. There's too much proof. The dominoes continued to fall. A small studio he'd applied to blacklisted him. A collaboration he'd been bragging about almost landing, publicly distanced themselves. People who once praised him went silent or disappeared completely. Alex showed up at my apartment 2 nights after everything collapsed. I heard the frantic knocking before I even reached the door, sharp, uneven, desperate. When I opened it, he stood there looking nothing like the smug, confident brother who once told me I should learn to start from nothing. His eyes were bloodshot, his hair disheveled, and his breathing shaky like he'd run the whole way. For a moment, he didn't speak. He just stared at me as if he barely recognized the person he had spent months tearing down. "I need to talk," he whispered. I didn't move. "About what?" He swallowed hard. "About everything. Please." I stepped aside reluctantly. He walked in and collapsed onto my couch, burying his face in his hands. "You ruined my life," he muttered. I froze. "I ruined your life?" He looked up, tears streaming. "I didn't think it would blow up like this. I thought people would. I don't know, see my potential." I laughed coldly. "By stealing my work? By destroying my reputation?" "I didn't destroy anything," he snapped, then immediately softened. "I mean, I just borrowed. I just wanted a chance. You always get everything." I stared at him in disbelief. "Everything? Alex, I worked for years you weren't even trying." He shook his head frantically. "It doesn't matter now. Just help me. Please. Tell people we worked together, say it was a misunderstanding. Fix this. Fix this." The entitlement in those two words hit me like a punch. "You want me to take responsibility for your actions again?" I asked quietly. He stood abruptly and grabbed my arm. "If you don't, I'm done. No one will ever hire me again. My life is over." "Let go," I said firmly. His grip tightened. "Please. I'm begging you. You're my brother." That word, brother, felt like an insult coming from him. I pulled my arm back and stepped away. "You didn't care about being my brother when you were destroying me." His face crumpled. "I made a mistake." "A mistake," I repeated. "A mistake you repeated for months." He exhaled shakily, sinking back onto the couch, looking small, broken, and suddenly terrified of consequences he never imagined would find him. And right then, I realized something chilling. He wasn't sorry for what he'd done, he was sorry he got caught. After Alex's breakdown in my apartment, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt done. Completely done. There was a strange quiet inside me, like whatever part of me had spent years carrying him had finally stopped moving. When he left that night, slamming the door behind him in one last burst of childish anger, I knew we had crossed a line we could never walk back from. The next morning, something unexpected happened. One of the major companies that had withdrawn earlier reached out. After reviewing the situation, their rep said, "We want to formally apologize. We would like to reopen discussions, this time with clarity about who the original creator is." My chest tightened, not with relief exactly, but with something close to it. "Thank you," I whispered. "Truly." Slowly, the debris Alex had scattered across my name began to clear. Clients who had distanced themselves returned. Some apologized openly. Others privately admitted they felt guilty for believing lies that sounded too dramatic to be real. And for the first time in months, I felt like my career wasn't being dragged underwater by someone else's hands. My parents called too. My mom's voice was soft, trembling. "We didn't know it was this bad." My dad exhaled quietly. "We should have listened to you." It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was an acknowledgement, and after everything, that was enough for me to finally let go of the resentment tightening my chest for so long. As for Alex, word spread quickly in industry circles. His name became synonymous with fraud. Every opportunity dried up. Friends cut ties. Even the small projects he'd bragged about were withdrawn. He tried reaching out a few more times, texts filled with desperate apologies, guilt trips, threats, and pleas. I didn't answer any of them.